Okay, welcome back to the Locker Room Podcast. A very exciting episode today. For the first time, excluding myself, we have an all-female lineup, so I'm sure there's going to be some very good discussions coming out of this. Before I mention our guest, our fantastic guest we got on today, I want a big debutant to Quiva, who's come in, who stepped in as a co-host this evening. And I've got to make sure I get all of her job roles right on the introduction. So Quiva is more importantly the head of education at DSS, which is the main one, number one. S&C coach, sports scientist at Basketball Ireland, women's coordinator at Rugby Academy Ireland, and head rugby coach for Mount Temple. Quiva, thank you very much for coming on. I know you've done a lot of work for the podcast in promoting them, so it's fantastic to get you on here.
Yeah, it's brilliant to see this side of it as well. Yeah, delighted to be on.
Perfect. I don't want to embarrass you too much, but you're big fans of our guest on today, so that's why we wanted to get you on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm a massive fan, seeing everything on Twitter and all the blogs and everything. So delighted to be on. Be good chat.
Fantastic. And then without any further ado, then introductions, we've got Erica Suter, and correct me if I'm wrong, you can go through your history in a minute, but S&C coach specialising within youth female athletes, and obviously with the business and the blog writing you're very famous for. And we've also got Evie Casagrande, who is S&C coach lead at Orlando Pride. So ladies, first of all, thank you so much for coming on. Don't worry about if there's any cross interference and you try and talk. It's all part of having two guests on, but thank you so much. Perfect. Okay, brilliant.
Thanks for inviting us. It's an honor to be in the same room with the three of you, which I love the collaboration that we've been doing and learning from each other. So
perfect. Thanks, Evie. And Erica, welcome on. Welcome. Thanks for giving up your time.
Yeah, I was really excited for this, and I'm on board with Ivy. It's just nice to be on a podcast with her again, and of course with you guys. I've been following Julie Sports Science for a while, and I'm in the trenches of being in the gym, so it's nice to get different perspectives from outside of what I'm doing. So I'm appreciative and excited for the conversation.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So I think we'll just before we jump straight in, a bit of a special mention to our sponsors who have extended their sponsorship of the podcast, which is www.ript, all capital letters, RYPT.app, an online platform that we're using quite a lot at DSS. Quiva, do you want to just talk a little bit about what we're doing at DSS and how Ript are helping us?
Yeah, so it's myself and Ben, who's sports scientist with DSS, and obviously who I've replaced today. But basically, we're offering two services. So one is personal training, and then the other is strength and conditioning. So the first is just for if you're looking for general fitness improvement, or if you're non-sports related. The second, then obviously if you're involved in a sport and you're looking for sport specific improvements. So really enjoying using Rift. So it's a brilliant service for myself and Ben to use. It's online. We can go on, create a workout. There's a library full of exercise videos and everything, so you literally just have to type in what the exercise is. A bunch of different videos will come up. You can put in your training tips, your timing, your tempo, your reps, and then for the actual athlete, it comes up in a really nice, easy to use mobile app, where it's just very simple. They see what their rep sets rest for each exercise is, run through it. They can log their wellness and everything. So really enjoying using that for the moment. Myself and Ben obviously flying with it, hoping to get a few more people on too.
Fantastic. Thanks, Quiva. And if anyone wants to go over and have a look at RIP, there's 2 months free at the moment over on Daily Sports Science website. It's a great platform for any coach, S&C coach, sports scientist looking to program remotely, which is quite topical now. Okay, let's jump straight in. So again, thank you so much for your time, ladies. Maybe we'll start with you, Erica, and just give us a little bit of an overview of where you got to and what you're currently doing in your role now.
Sure. So I've been working with youth on the performance side for almost 9 years now. And I played soccer since I was 6, went through the whole system, travel soccer, played at Johns Hopkins University in college, and then played a little bit abroad in Brazil. Shout out Ivy. Love that country. I lived there for a year and coached and trained down there. And when I came back, I decided to go all in with coaching youth because I had so much fun working with the kids in Brazil. So wanted to continue to give back to the game and develop youth athletes physically and also mentally and emotionally. So I started 2012 with just training one kid. I forget how I got signed up with this athlete, middle school girl. Remember it like it was yesterday, and just from there, it kind of grew through word of mouth, and now I'm working with teams in the Baltimore, Maryland area, abroad, across the United States, online. But I would say I'm 95% in person here in Baltimore, just mainly doing small group training. And my main population is with middle school and high school female soccer players.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Erica. And same for you, Evie, just where you are at the moment and how you got to where you got to.
Yeah, so I like Erica, I started playing soccer. I actually played professionally in Brazil first, and then got the chance to come to the U.S. in 2010 with a soccer scholarship. Played for Bowling Green State University. I was a pre-med at the time, and I wanted to go to med school. I wanted to go professional in Europe after I was done with my bachelor's too. But things got a little bit different route. I got a sports agent that stole my money and ran away. And my visa was about to expire here. So I just had to make the decision and realize that I couldn't afford med school by myself here, being an international. So that's when I got an invitation to apply for a master's program in Bowling Green State University, where I graduated with exercise physiology. So I went there and just fell in love with exercise physiology and sports science. So I started there 2 years. During my master's, that's when I learned the most because of my being able to apply in the practical world. I was the sports performance coach volunteer for the team that I played for, Bowling Green. And then during my master's, I was able to do internships. I did an internship with Axios, and I did a professional development trip in Europe. That's when everything kind of opened up. And then I went to Michigan for a year and a half to be the director of sports performance for youth. Again, fell in love with youth because of going to Arsenal and spending 15 days there doing a mentorship with Zest and Potty, and fell in love with how they do stuff there with their athletic development program. So I was able to do that and develop my own coaching philosophy with Redline. And then I started also doing work with U.S. youth national teams, currently still do. And then came to Orlando last year. So second season in Orlando. It's been quite a ride. It's been great so far. So.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And I'm going to jump the gun a little bit. I had this question for later on in the podcast, but it's come up in terms of your histories. We'll go to Erica first. The big thing around S&C and sports scientists, I feel, is that is there an advantage for those that have played the game and then are working in that sport? Some part of me thinks there could be, but then there's other, obviously personal skills. What's your thoughts on that? Do you think you've got an advantage, or you're ahead of where you could be maybe because you've got a good background in playing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think having a long-term background in playing, especially as far as understanding what it takes to develop for the long haul. I started doing strength and conditioning when I was in the 6th grade. So very early on, I understood what it took to be able to withstand the demands of the game and to thrive and to be able to adapt to new challenges and to be able to develop my speed, develop my strength, not get ACL tears, not get injured. So having that playing background and just understanding the work that it takes and the process that it takes to go through all of those years of development has been critical. Especially nowadays, I work with a lot of kids whose parents think this is some quick thing, that this is going to all happen overnight, when they don't realize that, just getting through the growth spurt is a process. Even just getting through that is going to improve speed or help with their soccer skills. So that was instilled in me all throughout my career, and just good old-fashioned hard work. And I've definitely permeated that philosophy into what I'm preaching with young athletes. And then as far as just tactical IQ, just being able to speak a coach's language and telling them why, what we're doing in the gym is going to help in maybe like a 1v1 situation, or make them be able to play an attacking formation, or being able to get back on defense. So just being able to speak their language and simplify physical training in application to tactical training. So it's definitely helped a lot.
Perfect. And just while we've got you there, and you touched on kind of the growth spurt stuff, can you give some views around, or your views around, long-term athletic development, and some key kind of, let's say, philosophical points that you consider going through different stages, and maybe just a bit around your coaching, and as broad or as narrow as you want to go on that, Erica?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a layered concept, long-term athletic development. But what I always come back to is just, and I'm sure Ivy would agree with me on this, is whatever age group it is. So if it's pre-adolescent, adolescent, always return to the basics. And Ivy, I'm sure, like, even in the pros, you're always reinforcing the basics year round, just because players, whether it's youth or pro, they're undergoing so much duress during the season, and in the youth game, it's year round at this point. So these kids aren't really getting a break. So they're going to return back to faulty movement patterns, or they're going to be fatigued. And I want to continue to reinforce the basics of coordination, trunk stability, especially for female athletes, balance, single leg strength, posterior strength, running technique, acceleration, and just making sure that they're really honing those motor skills. And I always say to soccer coaches and even parents, like, the physical side for long-term athletic development is the same as the technical piece. Like, you don't just work on your scissors move, 1 year and then you peace out and then you're done with your scissors move. You keep refining it. You keep developing it. You do it faster. You do it under pressure. And it's just something that has to continue to be revisited, all sides of the game. And I find it interesting that people think physical training is different. So it's just that consistent process, reminding kids of the basics and continuing to reinforce. At every session you see them. I see them at most 2-3 times a week. So if I get them for that limited time, we're always reviewing the basics, even if it's as simple as putting it into our warm-up.
Mm-hmm. That is great advice. And just a little bit there around the growth spurt then, is there anything that you've got that you do around that period? So depending on the person or the player, how they're responding to their growth, is there anything you adapt in the program, and what are the signs you look for?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so typically I see several things. So I'd see disrupted coordination. So if that means doing more within their warm-up to continue to work on that, whether it's like different skipping, crawling, rolling patterns, or even going as far as to give them something to do on their own at home if they're not seeing me as much. As far as growth injuries, I see a lot of patella pain. So that it's going to be a case-by-case basis, but really reinforcing like quad strength through isometrics. I like to use isometric lunges, just reinforcing the movement patterns, hip strength. But if it gets to a point where the strength training isn't enough and they need to see a physical therapist, I always recommend that they see one and we collaborate together on the program. And especially as far as load monitoring, I see a lot of girls trying to do too much during that period because they're practicing so much and playing so many games. So just really educating parents, providing them with as many resources as possible beyond just myself to work around those growing pains during that period.
And just anecdotally, before I go to you, Evie, what percentage would you say of the players you're training have disruptions through that period?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I would say, probably like 90% of them.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's more so now than when I started 8.5 years ago, just because like the decline in movement in youth. Mm-hmm. So kids are just really struggling with having body awareness, having spatial awareness, being coordinated, balancing, having total body strength. You don't see kids, getting outside and climbing trees as much or playing tackle football with the neighbors. So I think a piece of it has to do with that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I would say it's more so now than when I started out. So now my job is to just ensure they are educated and they have all the resources they need as far as what to expect during that time of growth.
Perfect. And we can see a lot of the good stuff you're doing on Twitter for anyone that's listening here. Evie, then going back to the playing side, do you think that's giving you a real advantage? And what do you think then the difference is between like a sports scientist, S&C coach who hasn't played the game at all and someone that has?
Personally, I think my situation was a little bit different than Erica's because in Brazil, I never did weightlifting before coming to college. It was not something that it's not something that you do. Now it's better, but now 10 years ago, not something that they would do, especially with female athletes and the female sports. They didn't get those resources to us. So I kind of learned how to, like, what to do based on what I didn't have. So, for example, I had a really bad back injury in my sophomore year lifting weights in college because I got there and they thought that I had a base and they didn't teach me the technique well. So I was like doing trap bar deadlifts with a lot of weight, and there's that mental toughness that a lot of college S&C coaches get to you, and like, come on, is that all that you're getting to your plate? And so that being an international coming already, I was super skinny and weak, and that was a little rough time where when I was done, I'm like, okay, I need to learn the other side of this and how to better prepare myself. So it was actually through my preparations to play pro in Europe during that time. I was in a sports performance company in Brazil that I went back and did a lot of training, and they kind of followed the X's methodology a little bit. So as soon as I started to kind of slow my movement down, learn the technique, being stronger and all that stuff, my game completely changed. I was feeling powerful on the field. My back was not hurting anymore. So it was really cool because I actually played semi-pro during my master's. So about a year and a half, I played a summer semi-professional soccer. And at that time, I was already kind of going through my coaching philosophy and trying things out on me, and the importance of recovery and the warm up and stuff like that. So I really was able to feel it out what was kind of going through a good strength conditioning program, and so that kind of opened my eyes. And of course, the understanding of the game always helps. It's never enough though. Like I still, like in Orlando, I made the commitment to really stick to my head coach and assistant coach and learn the most of the technical side, because I was a type of player that I was, I was not that smart. Like I was smart playing, but I didn't have that knowledge of the game that like I wanted to have. So that those a year and a half in Orlando, I learned so much with the technical staff, just to kind of collaborate and say, okay, how can we implement what you guys want in a formation in my warm up or in my movement skills and stuff like that. So that's been a huge kind of path that I took, and it's been really good.
Perfect. And then just jumping back to the long-term athletic development stuff, what are you looking for when you get athletes come to you at that, potentially they're the finished article, even though they're not, they're at the top end of the pyramid. What are you looking for when someone gets passed to you?
Yeah. So I always tell people, like, you always imagine that professional players know everything in terms of movement, and they move super well, and it's completely opposite. I think a lot of the professional players, they develop the compensations since such a early age, and a lot of them didn't have the coach that kind of guided them through, or even helped them throughout that. So it's a mix of kind of groups. You have the group that is like the rookies, which comes from the college system, which what I see the most during my evaluations, I do a lot of biomechanical evaluations and like analysis, video analysis, is that those players that come from the college systems, a lot of them are super powerful, so strong and so powerful, but then they can't slow it down. And when you tell them to do like a unilateral hop, a triple hop, it blows your mind. Wow, we have to go back to 101 kind of movement. But then you have the other players that kind of develop those compensations that actually move pretty well. Maybe it's not the safest way to move, and it brings chronic issues. So that's our role, is to see what is within their bandwidth of what normal is, and what normal is, or what's outside of that, their normal bandwidth, and kind of know how to do that and separate groups into different priorities. And I know my rookies and the players that need the most, and the basic, they are in one group in the gym, so I can really focus on all of them. So definitely it goes back to the youth. I think for me, I do the basics, like Erica said. I do the basics all the time, and I always tell them, you need to do the basics pretty well before you go to more complex things. So and again, even the fun stuff that we always do, like in warm-ups and stuff, like everybody thinks, oh, they're professional, like why are you doing like fun stuff for them? They should be like just pretty focused. And like, this is like, you can balance things out, and they love that. They literally, when I don't do anything fun in the warm-up with them, they get pissed, and they're like, okay, no games today? Are you just gonna go straight to the drill? I'm like, so definitely I always say to coaches, like, you need to really coach youth first if you want to go to the professional, because it's all about how to deal with those things. So
sure, that's great stuff there. Ivy, do you think that as an industry, but I don't know the American system as well, so maybe you've got more insight on this, do you think that we've geared a bit towards chasing big numbers in the weights room, and we've forgot a little bit about quality of movement, about landing, about deceleration, and those kind of other side of things? Not that the lifting's important, but do you think we're too eager to go to the big numbers as an industry?
Yeah, I think, in my opinion, that's from my own experience. What I think is we're getting so much better now, but the American football-oriented culture of S&Cs are where it's just about how much weight they're able to do, and even that. And another thing that I think it would be better is to incorporate S&C coach to field work too. Because what happens in the American system, you have the S&C coach that doesn't know what's going on normally, what's happening on the field. So you get those players from a field session, and they have no communication what just happened. If there's a return to play player, they don't know anything what the return to play in the field is. So I think there's a really big lack of communication between departments in the American system. I think once we start putting more coaches where they start watching practice, and they start, or even having somebody on the field communicating with the S&C coach in the gym, saying, okay, this is exactly what the plan is. Player so and so needs to be a little bit managed, all that stuff. Then you would get way less injuries, because you know how to manage them better, and know when to push harder or when to kind of manage them a little bit.
And to come off 100%. That's one thing maybe with our system, because we're primarily academies, so you would be on the pitch and in the gym and working with coaches. So maybe it's slightly different over here, but it's huge. The integration's huge. Quiva, I'm going to pass over to you. You're going to go through a section and cover a whole range of topics, I believe.
Yeah, cool. So I'll start with a couple of questions for yourself, Evie, and then I'll jump over to Erica. So you might start and pull it back a little bit to your journey to where you are at the moment. So I think probably one of the wildest stories I've heard, going from pro player in Brazil, and then changing from pre-med, which is a massive course, into something else. So and I think a hot topic at the moment seems to be what kind of qualities should people who want to be involved in pro sports have. And personally, I think resilience and that kind of adaptability is massive. I think you have to have that if you want to make it, and I think you probably have that in buckets. But is there anything in your journey that you chatted through there? Is there any experiences that have helped you, in your career decisions and how to navigate that world?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is since I came and I left all my family at home and kind of going through all that stuff by myself, it was really, really good experience to deal with my own stuff by myself, which sometimes is hard. Like even my family was too far away to kind of help me deal. If I had an emotional breakdown, I'm like, I'm just going to deal with it and I'll figure it out. So I think based on the process, I mean, there's so many adversities that came into that, my journey in terms of like, even the first week of when I came to the US, there's like a confusion with the NCAA, with my grading system, because they didn't have a lot of experience with having international students, so they didn't understand my GPA. So I had to stay 20 days locked in my room because I couldn't go to practice, because they said that I had to appeal for the NCAA in order to even start practicing. And that was my first 2 weeks in America by myself. So all through that, a lot of times I always like, what should I do? Am I just going to give up and try different things? And I always kind of decided to endure and like, I'm going to prove myself that I'm going to go through it. And it happened in my professional career too. I mean, I'm 29. I almost had 2 burnouts already with all that. And it's just like, I think as coaches, we all know how stressful it is. And I think even in Orlando, I think my first year was emotionally, like I was a emotional wreck. Like it was just so hard. I was so hard on myself for being like dealing with so like many the best players in the world, and am I good enough for that? And going through that mental thought and say, maybe that's not for me. Maybe I'll go and go back to youth development and stuff. And so that get into that process that I've as a player, I'm like, no, I'm not going to give up, and I'm going to give another year. I'm going to prove myself. And the growth that I had from my first year to my second season, where I've been through everything with them, especially with the coronavirus, and kind of being the best that I could be for them, and teaching like some new resources and new stuff, mental health stuff, from my own experience, because I need it. So I'm trying to pass it on to the players, because it's such a big thing. So definitely, I think the biggest thing is to kind of learn and know that is a big process, and you just got to be patient and keep grinding, and things will get better eventually. So
yeah, it's just deadly. And I think like you're alluding to sort of say your experience as an athlete and being able just to push through the hard trainings and push through difficult weeks is really, really transferred over well to your career. And I think when you're speaking of burnout as well, and I saw Erica nodding along, and I think I've been through it myself as well. And it's a massive issue. And I think, that we all get into the habit of trying not to have gaps in our coaching CV and everything, and that kind of process of learning to say no. And it would be great to see more work done for younger coaches there to sort of, and everything that you're speaking about there, that, someone there to give that advice to say, these are kind of strategies you need to implement, and this is what you need to keep an eye out for. I think that's excellent.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that we talk too much about the player aspect and forgot about the mental health of coaches. And I think there's not a lot of resources for that. And I think that's definitely something that needs more attention. I know me and Erica have always been talking about this, the mental health, and how that it's so important in our own process. So.
Yeah. Erica, if you've got anything to add to that, you can work away.
Yeah, I think I'm totally in agreement with Ivy. I mean, we're natural like healers and givers as coaches, because we realize this is the human business, and we're caring for humans. And I've absolutely questioned myself as a coach all the time, every week, I'd say. And it's because as far as the youth, it's like I feel like I'm a mother to like 100 kids. So naturally, I'm going to, want the best for them. I want them to stay healthy. I want them to succeed. I want them to do well on the field, but also off. And when something goes wrong, whether someone like tweaks an ankle or, fails a test in school, like I like feel that myself. I'm like, okay, like what could I have done better here? How could I have monitored load better? Or I sometimes tend to put it on myself, which it's a blessing and a curse. I try to see it as a blessing more so because it means I'm trying to solve the puzzle. Like Ibby's always said, the puzzle of athlete development. Like I feel if we didn't question ourselves and we did what we did 8-10 years ago, we wouldn't be growing. We wouldn't be serving our athletes. We wouldn't be staying up to date. So I think it's good to just keep growing, keep asking questions. And we always preach adaptation and progress to our players. And I think it's okay for us to preach that to ourselves. Like we're always improving. And that's how I see my career. And I try to teach that to my athletes off the field as well. We take inventory a lot because I do it in my own life, and I want them to learn how to check in with themselves. Where can they fill the buckets? Are they sleeping well? Are they nourishing their bodies? Are they hydrating? Are they on social media too much? Like we have so many categories going, relationships, friendships, school, like we literally are like ranking everything. And I always tell them like, not every category is going to be perfect, but as long as like there is a small improvement each week, you're on the right track. Okay. So if I see you a week from now, I expect you to be a different person, just a little bit. Not perfect, but there needs to be some sort of improvement. And I think that's just the key, just remembering that none of this is a perfect journey, coaching, career, and athletic development. And just continuing to check in with yourself. And as long as you're improving, then I'd say you're on the right track.
No, that's excellent. I think a lot of it is almost taking your own advice as a coach, that if you saw one of your athletes was, really down or exhausted, what would you say to them? And kind of taking that advice on yourself. And it sparks a memory of, I had a chat with a coach who was quite down on himself because something went wrong. And the question was put to him, well, if you had an athlete on the pitch who made a mistake on the pitch, would you be giving out to them, or would you say, look, mistakes happen, let's move on? And I think that's good advice that we had to take on as well, that, as you're saying, it's all about adaptation and growing and learning as you move through.
Yeah, I'd add, especially with youth, it's what I've just noticed over the years is kids are kind of becoming less self-aware, whether that's from being entranced by social media or distractions in the world, and they're not really like looking inside themselves. Okay, look, what can I improve? What am I capable of? Like, what can I do each day to be better? So just really teaching them self-awareness, taking inventory, and thinking for themselves.
Excellent. Okay, move on to another question then for yourself again, Evie. So I think one of my favorite things, as Ross mentioned at the start, is all of the tweets and the videos you guys, the pair of you, are putting up on Twitter recently. But Evie, every time I see a video from training with the Orlando Pride women, the thing that sticks out for me is they just seem to be having so much fun, so much crack. So I know you've got a background in coaching kids, and that fun element is obviously important for coaching kids, but why is that so important for you for senior women, and then how do you actually implement that into your training?
Yeah, so I think Erica knows how much we have to be creative, and you guys know that when you deal with youth, you have to be creative every day. And I actually even like get that anxiety before my warm-ups, because I'm like, I need to make this like the best warm-up ever. Like I want my players to be really like, okay, I love this. And I think that constant like pushing myself to sometimes the anxiety is like actually good, because I'm always like, okay, I need to do the best one now. How can I change that a little bit so they don't get bored? I mean, I think the worst thing that you can feel is like when you're doing a warm-up, you just like, you see that them just going with the flow, like just going through the motions. And it's like, no, let's get, the purpose of the warm-up is getting them ready, physically ready. Once we get through that, now can we put something in between that's going to be a little bit boring, but we need to do that. So maybe a lateral work or deceleration work. And then they're like, okay, they're about to get bored, but don't worry, guys, I have something coming, and you're going to be happy. Okay. So that's what I normally do. And it's just a fun process. It's for me, it's so, the important thing is get them sharp, like really sharp to get to the first drill. And I think when your warm up is kind of, you go through the motions and you just don't make them think and make them, then the first drill, there's always feedback that the first drill, they're never that good if the warm up is not good. So I take that personally, and I'm like, okay, so let's get this. So that's what I normally do with them every day. I try to get something different, bend the rules a little bit, and it's just funny. I mean, I remember during our return from lockdown, Sydney Leroux, she's always like making fun. She hates the world's greatest stretch, and she hates doing inchworms. So she got into one day, and we're like about to get a warm up done. I actually have the footage of this. And I'm like, okay, guys, let's do Sid's favorite world's greatest inchworm. And then she's like, come on, I'm just not feeling it today. I just don't. And then I'm like, okay, so let's do marching with skips. And she's like, no, I don't feel it. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna take a lap. You guys do the warm up. So I left, and I just like start doing 3 laps and say, you guys figure it out. The warm, just like fun, just to like. And they're like all laughing, like, okay, you come back. We don't know what to do anymore. So just that process of like, making it fun and making it enjoyable, but not something that is like, okay, warm up, let's get warm up. I want one more warm up. So, and then the creativity comes from definitely my training with the youth and how they challenge me to be better every day and bring different rules. And with the professional, the only thing is they're pretty smart, and you can like sometimes, I mean, not that kids are not smart, but it's just they're like how to know to get those rules and cheat. They cheat all the time. So if you're not smart on your rules, they're just gonna eat you alive. I learned that in the worst form. So yeah, so that's, I mean, it's very cool, and I try to meet them halfway. I always ask for feedback from the players. I mean, what can I do better? And can we get the ball a little bit more? Yeah, sure. So let's do the first session of that drill. We do what I want you guys to do, maybe movement skills, and then at the end you receive a ball and you do whatever and bring a competition. And the players, like they ask for it. Like even like I remember telling one day, she's like, Evia, we need something fun today because we're just tired and we're just fatigued. We need to get ready for this session. So they like that because they feel like, okay, I'm good to go. I'm sharp. I'm ready to go. So it's definitely cool, but it gives me anxiety every day. It's like, okay, pressure's on me.
Well, that's great though, because like you obviously have great athlete buy-in then, because the amount of videos that I see that there's players diving on the line to try and beat their opponent and everything, which is massive. And
it gets dirty. Sometimes I have to cut down, like, okay, let's go to your first drill, and I have to cut the drill because they get so competitive. I'm like, okay, guys, stop.
Yeah, so on the topic then of kind of working with the youths, Erica, we'll come to yourself. So obviously, you're very passionate around that PHV and LTAD and everything, and you work with a lot of athletes who are around that kind of area. So maybe you could just chat us through what your priorities would be for coaching kids going through that PHV window, and have you any practical examples then of what you do in your training to help them through that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just want to mention, like, as far as what Ivy was saying, the number one priority for youth every session is fun, and I'm just seeing like a lot of just not as much encouragement in the youth game, like taking risks or a lot of like the technical drills are extremely rehearsed. I've been very outspoken about this as far as like what you see on Instagram with skills training. So like the more I can give them fun and give them that spontaneity and allow them to express themselves in a creative way, the better. Just because, I mean, soccer is the ultimate creative expression, and players are making decisions in split seconds in different environments, different scenarios, to different stimuli. So the fun games, like, not only they're fun, but they're really cultivating an environment where kids can feel they can express themselves and be creative. Now, as far as just going through PHB and the growth spurt, again, I try to stick to basics as much as possible, and it's really all about education with the coaches, as far as monitoring load and not putting maturing girls through heavy plyometric drills or just high volume plyos, or making them run on stadium steps. I see that a lot. So just informing coaches why that's not good during that period, and we need to work on things like hamstring strength, quad activation, glutes, total body posture, core stability, so that their knees are healthier, they're more stable. So that's how I navigate that. And then even just after PHB, sometimes weight goes up, so there's a lot of gain in fat, and girls tend to wonder what's going on, or parents are like, why are they slowing down? Why is their performance waning? And I have to educate around that as well. As far as like the training, I don't really change it too much. I just try to hammer the basics as possible, because if I can't have people stick to that, then I can't progress to more advanced work. And usually the solution to disrupted coordination, disrupted speed, is just coming back to teaching them technique, jumping, landing, accelerating, their arm action, and all the motor skills they need during that time period.
Deadly. And I think you can see from the videos you would post that those kind of, the isometric movements, or the movements where it's challenging their own awareness of what position they're in, what position are their knees, their feet, and everything in. And I think it's something that you use amongst all genders, all ages, which obviously it's an important thing at that window of PHV as well, but it seems to be something that's massively important to you, no matter what age, what gender they are as well.
Yeah, I've been exploring isometrics a lot more, especially in the form of a lunge or an isometric single leg deadlift. And yeah, I like it because they can really feel the position. But when we start to hold for a lot longer, we work on breathing. So internally, they're extremely stressed out and it's painful. But when I get them back to diaphragmatic breathing and focusing on their breath, they're like, oh, wait, like if I'm feeling under duress, I can like come back to that to calm my nervous system down. And I try to teach that lesson through isometrics, that maybe they're recovering from a sprint in the game or a tough conditioning drill. Like, come back to your breath, get oxygen back into your body, calm your nervous system. So that's part of the reasoning why I've started to include more isometrics for that nervous system response.
Excellent. And then why chat about sort of the blogs and the articles that you post as well. And it's very clear to see, because you often write open articles to, youth sports or parents or coaches and everything, and how, you're very passionate about what sport does for a person's confidence and their self-efficacy and so on. And then also, making both parents and players aware that it's not the be all end all, that if you don't make it as a pro soccer player, it's not the end of your world either, that there's different priorities there. So what is the motivation behind that being so important for you?
Mm-hmm. Oh gosh, a couple of reasons. So I think, I have my own biases, but growing up, like, I just love the game so much. I felt very in my flow state when I was playing soccer. And I want that for every kid. I don't want them to step on the field and be afraid of not taking risk or making a mistake, not being able to be creative. Like I want them to feel that flow state where they don't judge themselves and they just play and they're in the zone and they're in the present moment. And it absolutely goes into life beyond sport. Like, are they able to study for the MCAT without being scared, or apply to medical school, or maybe they're a CEO of a company and they're presenting to their company. Are they nervous for it? Are they going into it with full confidence? So just teaching them lessons that they get through sport, just plunging into fear, taking risk, not being afraid of making mistakes, being confident. So that's why I preach that so much. And I want all young athletes to fully express themselves and to not just be defined by the accolades they get. I kind of got caught up in that when I was in college, but then I was like, wait a minute, like, this is not why I've enjoyed soccer for so long. I've enjoyed it because I love taking on defenders. I love creating 1v1 moves. I love like twirling around defenders and out of pressure. Like, that was like when I had the most fun. So I just want to continue to teach that lesson of creative expression and joy.
And I think it's a vastly important thing as well for coaches to have that motivation, because we know from a lot of studies that kids would far prefer to be on a losing team where they played, half a game or a full game, rather than be on a winning team and they didn't get a second of game time. So really admire that. I think it's a very important quality in a coach. And I think something that I've learned over the past couple of years, something I would always say to the kids that I'm coaching, is I don't really believe in mistakes. That yes, maybe, you didn't pass the ball well, or you missed a shot, or whatever it might be, but maybe it's because, you're working on some other feedback that I gave you during the week, and that skill was just put off a little bit. So I really like that. I think, don't be afraid to make mistakes. And we know that the skills that kids learn in sport definitely transfers over into their normal life. So I really admire everything you're saying there. It's very important for those who are involved in youth sports to have, I think.
Yeah, and I would say, like, I'm also biased because I've never worked with professional athletes. So the kids that I'm working with, they're like lowest level recreational, they're elite travel. So they're like on all different ends of the spectrum. But the common theme I've seen with the kids I work with is they like truly love the game. They love working out. They love taking care of themselves. And like, even now, like during COVID-19, I'm just seeing just the human component of all this, and like, what are we doing to take care of ourselves? Are we moving? Are we working on our strength? Are we nourishing our bodies? Are we trying to boost our immunity as much as possible? And are we really taking control of our lives? Because right now, COVID-19, like, I don't know if there's going to be a deadlier virus down the road, but like, what are we doing now to control what we can control? And I think that's just an important message, is just like being the most adaptable human you can be and being the strongest human you can be on and off the field.
Yeah, that's excellent points. So we're going to go and try to deal with the big issue that's in female sport, obviously, and around ACL and that kind of injury reduction stuff. And question for both of you, but I might come to yourself, Evie, first. Obviously I sat in on your seminar over the weekend, I think part one of a 4-part series on that kind of return to play, and you spoke about sort of the actual mechanics of what happens in the steps before an ACL injury, what actually happens when someone does rupture or injure that ACL. So I know you spoke a lot about sort of the acceleration, deceleration, all those kind of mechanics that you would teach in your training. So maybe just chat through any strategies you have to help reduce the risk of that kind of injury.
Yeah, I think for me, it's back to the basics, right? And it's being able to really develop that coaching eye. There's not a lot of technology that can be better than the coaching eye. I think it's constantly assessing movement through warm-ups, wow, this is a great assessment tool, right? And it's easy, and you can check for like if a player is happier than normal, it's just sad, or it's moving terribly and they normally move well. If they're doing a world's greatest stretch, if they cannot like extend that back leg, but they normally do extend that back leg normally. So it's there, a tightness there. So I think a lot of the things that I see is mostly kids just, they sprint, but they don't know how to decelerate. And I think deceleration is so big. And I think we've talked this about in the seminar, but like it's when you decelerate and people just focus on the knee valgus, right? And it's like, okay, that's way more than that. And what is the trunk control? What is the foot? And a lot of the times you see like excessive pronation and kids not being able to control that movement. And then of course the knee is going to come in result from the foot. So have like a kind of a holistic way to see things, and understanding that, I mean, when I coach the youth, like even now a pro, like sometimes players come in with some shoes in the gym. I'm like, okay, let's do left barefoot because this specific shoe that you're wearing, it's like, no, don't do that. It's just like it makes a difference. Like when you're doing like a single leg stuff with the shoe that has like huge heels, like you're not really feeling the ground and you're not being really able to control that and win that tug of war between pronation and supination. It's like you need those, right? But it's the excessive pronation or excessive supination that can cause problems. So we try to assess that day one in our assessments. In our unilateral hop, we film from front, side, back, triple hop. Now you're adding more speed to it and more complex, then you're going to see even more compensation. Gait, like we literally film their gait in 4 miles an hour, 5 miles an hour, and then 8 miles an hour. What is the difference of the gait? What are the compensatory patterns once they go into more speed? And then you can, like we're talking with Erica, like I like the puzzle, right? Like you have all those pieces and how you get that puzzle together. And it's just the most exciting part of being a coach is how, okay, you talk about ACL, but are you covering the basics? Are you being able to, measure their hip external rotation, hip internal rotation, hip ankle mobility? What is that affecting their max speed mechanics? How is that affecting their deceleration mechanics, right? So if you can't try to work on that and build like a robust athlete that is able to handle those. And again, we always say at the professional level, especially, you don't want to change the way they move. Like they've been, if they're compensated, they've been compensated forever, right? But it's how can you create that robustness that they can compensate without problems, without causing chronic issues. So in the gym, like being strong and being able to control, it's not just going up and down and not being able to feel positions. And I think Erica said that is being able to breathe in positions and own those positions is really important. So that's all, like for me, it's ACL, prevention or whatever we might call, is just being able to own the positions and control. And exercise selection in the gym, normally what I do is like, how can you, because we have really limited time with our players, right? And we have to find ways that our exercise selection is going to really challenge the stability, especially, right? So instead of me doing like a dumbbell row where they just hold in their bench, I normally do like a bird dog row to really challenge their stability. Or I do a single leg RDL, doing a row, holding that single leg RDL position. So another one that I love to do is stability chop and stability lift. A lot of motor control on that, because if you do it in a split squat position, so you go get that cable and you do a chop, and then you tell the player, okay, can you hold that position for me? And then I take the resistance off. So taking that resistance off is like a sensory way for them to really know if they're actually holding the positions or are they just doing the movement with the arms. So kind of challenging that, and exercise selection being a big way to microdose good things that it's going to affect them in the long run. So I think it's a holistic way of seeing things, and I think that's really important.
Yeah, it comes back to just building the most robust athlete as possible, and it doesn't need to be anything too complicated. I always say attack all muscle groups in the gym, and like Ivy said, microdose if you need to. If maybe an athlete is doing more hip internal rotation or needs more ankle mobility work, just add it into their movement prep, or like they just get there 5 minutes early and do it. But overall, just working on all the muscles that are involved in things like accelerating, cutting, changing direction. I know a lot of people tend to focus on like knee valgus and preventing that at all costs, or, you know, athletes are too quad dominant, but we still have to strengthen the quads because they play a role in the deceleration, but we want to make sure that they're co-contracting all those muscles when they're decelerating, changing direction. So hamstrings, quads, feet and ankle, glutes. So it's just, again, just developing the total athlete. I think posture is huge. So just coming back to being able to stabilize the core. So do a lot of plank variations, crawling variations, even just like getting a good solid pull-up. That is probably one of the toughest core exercises you can do, but it's also helping with posture. We do a lot of hangs with arms extended overhead, working on the shoulder girdle. So a lot of hangs help with posture and making sure they don't have like the classic slouch shoulders, soccer look, and they're able to open up their chest. So the research behind that is, if they're slouching, the stress response in the body is going to be greater, going to cause more fatigue. So I've just been trying to do more research on posture and how it affects the nervous system. But yeah, really just developing the whole athlete and looking beyond physical training. So I've seen, and I've made mistakes, like we've chased strength, like a lot of strength early in my career before movement quality. Or we didn't pay enough attention to load monitoring, or I didn't communicate with college coaches enough, and I've seen catastrophes happen. And I was like, wait a minute, like that girl was deadlifting the most, or she was split squatting the most. What was going on there? Oh, wait a minute, like her sleep wasn't good. Her coach had them do, you know, a 3-mile run and then the Man U test all in one day, and then she hurt her knee. So there's just so many factors that go into injury, and just ensuring that we're aware of all of them. I think if we're not load monitoring, if youth coaches aren't load monitoring, we are like just being disintegrous. Like it is like really catastrophic if no one's doing that. And it's not happening as much in the States with clubs as I want it to. But part of that is just continuing to educate and to ensure coaches understand the load needs to be in constant oscillation. We have to constantly ask our athletes how they're feeling, how they're sleeping, what's going on in school, and like really understand what's going on in their lives. I don't care how strong an athlete is, if they're getting 2 hours of sleep, they're not eating breakfast, and they can't sustain and have the energy in the second half, then could be a recipe for disaster. So strength matters, total body strength matters, but the other pieces matter just as much.
Yeah, I think you almost have to be aware that, you know, although you might have strength and conditioning on your job title, that there's also elements of that nutrition, of the sports psychology, of whatever it might be that I think there's definitely a need for strength coaches or sports coaches to have some sort of education around that. Because if not, like you say, you'll have kids who are putting themselves in danger then, and especially we know it's an issue with female athletes around, with female athlete triad or the Red S syndrome. So massively important then for coaches that you have that duty of care to make sure that you're not just looking after the player, but you're also looking after the person as well.
Mm-hmm. And I forgot to mention even just the menstrual cycle starting for some of these girls when they're 12, 13 years old, that's something a lot of coaches tend to shy away from. And I understand a lot of male coaches might feel uncomfortable, or, they just aren't educated yet on it. But it's extremely important as far as what's going on physically in their bodies, and even just their fatigue. I mean, when their cycle starts at that age, it's like a very stressful thing. and that alone can really impact how a player is showing up at practice when it does start. I actually had a girl, she just started her cycle last week for first time ever, 12 and a half years old. And her mom called me and was like, "Hey, sorry to bother you." And I was like, "No, like, thank you for telling me, like, this is a big deal. Like, there's probably a lot going on and like emotionally for her right now. And like, I'm just glad that you made me aware. Like, I absolutely like can tweak the session." Like, and the mom was like, "Should she still come?" And I was like, "Absolutely. Like, we'll take care of her." And just really understanding that's a big deal, and training does have to be tweaked for females in that sense, whether it's cutting back on volume, or maybe it's not cutting back on volume and maybe it's just optimizing their recovery and just educating on what they can eat, or what can help them with their energy levels.
And how would you sort of help maybe your athletes be more comfortable speaking to you about that, or do you primarily get calls from parents who are letting you know, or have you put in strategies in place that have helped your athletes be more comfortable chatting about that?
I think it's it just comes back to just developing trust over the year. So and just letting the parents know that there's a lot going on during this age, and just that I understand and I'm willing to talk about it and listen. So yeah, I think it's just having that trust with the players. They're usually not afraid to say, they had a rough day at school, or they might be in a fight with a friend, or whatever it may be that's going on in their life. So that's why it's so important as coaches, just beyond the X's and O's and the exercise science, like that stuff's all cool and all. But the relationships and just building trust with your players is the most important for me.
Brilliant. It's good to hear. And I think, again, that's vital for youth coaches to have that kind of motivation as well. So it's great to hear. So my final question then before we hand over to Ross. So we know, I guess, S&C is pretty much dominated by kind of white males. We see a lot of white males who are in the more, full-time professional positions. No offense, Ross, now. But that, I think a question kind of gets asked a lot, I find, to female coaches is, what advice would you have for female coaches who are looking to make their way? And I kind of wanted to flip it on its head a little bit and say, we know that companies, that people in charge will hire people who look like them. So because it's dominated by, white straight males, they will hire white straight males because, people hire people who look like them. So would you have any advice, either Erica or Evie, whoever wants to take it, on, organizations not only being open to looking at applications, but from female S&Cs, but actively encouraging female S&Cs or sports scientists, whatever it might be, to apply for jobs?
Yeah, well, I think I remember this. I'm never going to forget this moment. When I was during my first month at my last job as a director of sports performance, I was hiring coaches for the position to build my team. So, and my general manager is a guy. So we would always sit down. I'd sit on my office here, and then my general manager next to it, and then the person, the applicant, will sit in front of me and kind of sideways, right, to my general manager. I had so many male coaches that would not look into my eyes, and when he would be working for me, and I am and would not look into my eyes, would not ask questions for me. There's one applicant that I'm never gonna forget this. We were talking, he would never look at me. My general manager got a call during the interview that was like one of the stuff that we need to get done in the facility. Was like, "Excuse me, I'm gonna have to answer that call." So my general manager left. This guy, first thing he comes like, "So how did you get this job?" That's the first thing that he said. So never gonna forget that. I think that from that, I think a lot of the times we need to change a little bit of we can't feed that thought of like, okay, female coaches and they're never going to have, you know, the equality and all that stuff. I think we need to stop there and say, okay, how can we be better coaches? And then when you say coaches, let's talk about good coaches, right? If it's female or male, good coach. What is a good coach? Or I think the biggest thing is there's a lot of ego in our industry, and that's apparent. Like, it's so easy to see. I think a lot of the times it's male coaches. I think they just need to be a little bit more prone to listen to us and let us do our job. I think I've dealt with that a lot in terms of, like, maybe they don't know how good I am until they actually let me do my job and not interrupt me if I'm trying to say something. It's like, oh, by the way, that's how I do. I'm like, can I say how can I do, and let me do the job. So I think that starts with just listening and just being humble enough to let coaches do their job. And I think the other thing is female empowerment. I think that's big for me. I think a lot of the female coaches that I talk to, they're just starting in the industry. They just don't have the confidence. And I was like that too. And it's, how can you develop that confidence and put your foot down and say, I know what I'm doing and I know I'm good at my job, and kind of, you know, don't be, I'm afraid. Because the reality is when you're a female and you try to tell people what to do, you're a bitch. Sorry, my language, but that's what it is. But if a male is trying to be really strict with something, it's just how they're really good at their job. They really, you know. So I think that's kind of start with us as female coaches being like, putting the foot down and say, I know what I'm doing. I'm confident in empowering other coaches that might not have the same confidence. I mean, I've talked to so many young coaches this past 10 days. And that's the biggest thing that they say is like, I'm just not confident enough. And I think that it's a two-way thing. It's like, okay, how can you develop that confidence and be better and be the best coach that you can be, so people see that you're worth, but also male coaches being able to learn and teach, learn and listen and let us do our thing, and at least give us a chance to show that we know what we're doing. So that's my take on it. Sorry, long answer.
No, it's good, because I think, like we said, like half the issue is that you might not get your foot in the door just, you know, by the name on the CV. But another part is absolutely it is that, you know, females are less likely to put their hand up. And I really relate to that whole thing of, you know, someone not looking you in the eye, or, you know, I might be the head coach of a team, of a boys team or a men's team, and a referee or the manager of the other team might go straight over to my assistant coach who happens to be a male. And just small things, they kind of annoy you a little bit, but you can, I think I can understand what you're saying, though, that you know, we also have to put our hands up. And I think it's a very important lesson. I think it's, you know, for me personally, it's just sort of saying, you know, like, it doesn't matter, just, sure, fuck it, like, just go for it. If you make a mistake, you learn from it. Everyone does the same, you know.
Yeah, I think it becomes about just building the confidence, and that only comes by just doing it and getting your feet wet. And I'm having flashbacks to when I interned at a Division I school when I first started, and it was like an all-male staff, and they were just like very hard on the interns, and like we had to teach the Olympic lifts in front of the whole staff, and they just like tore us up. Like especially me, I just like bombed it. Like, Olympic lifts not my strong suit, but it was a learning lesson, and I had to fail in order to get better. And I look back and there's so many things that I've like cued my athletes where I was like, what the heck was I saying? And it's just, you just have to go through the experience and working with all different types of athletes, all ages, male, female, professionals, kids, whoever, did personal training for a while. So it's just getting the experience, and then you eventually get the confidence, and you just keep improving. And I just encourage all women to just kind of change the mindset. A lot of them kind of go into it kind of like a fixed like victim mindset, like, oh, well, all these men have jobs, and like that's the problem right there. So I'd rather them do what they can control, get the experience, like Ivy said, focus on being a better coach, work on your skills, whether maybe you need to teach speed better, do a speed course, or get a mentor. Like mentorship has helped so much, and just collaborating with other women and cheering them on. I know I asked Ivy and other women in the industry for advice, whether it's for coaching or for mental health, and just having that community of other women who want to get better and who are growing and have that mindset helps so much. And they become not just colleagues, but friends who like really support your journey and keep you focused when you have breakdowns or you have blind spots and you feel like you're messing up all the time. But it's good to just kind of confirm with them, okay, I'm not going crazy right now, like everything's good. And I always come back to my mantra and do this with my young girls, but this has never failed me, and it's work hard, be kind. We have it on our training shirts, and it's never ever failed me. Work hard, work on your skills, connect with other people, and just be of service to others. Like we are in the service industry. So focus on serving your players and getting them better, and you're going to be a good coach if you care about them.
Yeah, definitely. I think girl power is great as well. Like, surround yourself with people you can learn from, and especially if you're female coach, it's great to have one or if not a few of your mentors to be female coaches as well. You can learn a lot from them too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks, Quiva. I can take myself off mute now, girls. Yeah, is that? I'm enjoying this. I just get to sit back and listen to conversation, so it's perfect. It's a new role for me, I think, in future episodes. Listen, rest assured, you two are flying the flag for the female coaches in there and doing great jobs. And as Evie said, it's about the best person for the job, I think, and having this industry creating an open mindset, a growth mindset. Hopefully, we're going to start to see some change across all areas of diversity and equality. So thank you very much for that. I just want to bring a couple more questions, because I know, Evie, you're the busiest woman in the world at the minute. You're running around, and I don't want to take up too much of your time. Let's just draw it back to the mental health stuff, because I know it's really big and important for you girls. Evie, let's start with you. What should be happening for support for players and staff, as you mentioned, that maybe isn't happening? Because we're probably having to take on strategies for ourselves to manage it. But what should be out there, and what processes should be available to us, do you think, as an industry?
Yeah, I think COVID-19 has really helped us to kind of learn new resources and new tools. I think for us, the biggest thing that it really helped our team during the tough time that we've all been through, it's mindfulness and breathing. I think that was like, even when people were closed-minded to try it out, we're like, okay, can you please just try it? And even like the people that are just really hyped and all the time and really hyper, and they loved just 5 minutes, 10 minutes of your time to literally get your phone away. Take your phone away, just breathe, just focus on your breathing. And I've been doing that a lot myself. I do 3 times a day, and it's been helping me tremendously. And there's so many good resources there in terms of breathing techniques and different breathing patterns that you can try to help you with different ways. Like, you can do a pre-workout breathing technique. You can do a pre-nap breathing technique, mindfulness technique, before bed. And I think that's because, to be honest, the social media world sometimes eats us alive. I think I myself included, it's just, okay, my screen time, like 9 hours a day, I need to stop like using my phone. It's just like, and there's so much like coming with that. Like, there's a pressure from our world, like Twitter, cruel world. Twitter is, oh my gosh, there's so many So it's like, and there's a lot into that. And the same thing with players, like, especially with players, they're all like being judged on what they do and what they don't do and all that. So taking that time to really reflect on yourself and say, okay, can I take 10, 15 minutes of my day to take my phone away and I just breathe in and breathe out. That's all it takes. And kind of being, the mindfulness, I like it because it's like the present, right? I think the anxiety comes with the unknown, what's going to happen right now. I mean, everybody's going crazy right now because we never know when this is all going to be gone, when things are going to go back to the new normal. So that brings anxiety because that's something we can't control. So being able to be present where we are right now, control what we can't control. I know everybody talks about that, but it's true. Like, it's how can you get those tools and resources to really work on the present, and I think that will get the anxiety out of the window. I mean, it's for me, it's just the unknown that brings me anxiety. So breathing techniques and mindfulness has been top priority for me. And kind of, I mean, during COVID, I don't know if you guys saw, like, our Zoom workouts are crazy. Like, I started doing like 70s theme workouts and kind of like getting them to really express themselves and being able to get out of that negativity, which news all the time. Don't watch the news. I mean, especially now, you just gotta watch it at least once a week. I think now it's good for me. So before, I used to go on the news every morning. I'm like, no, that's just not healthy. So those little things, and then tell players and educate players on how that can affect their lifestyle, how can affect their health and mental health. So I think that's really important, and it's been really big for me as a coach and dealing with my mental breakdown.
Thanks, Evie. And do you think there needs to be more education to sports scientists, SSC coaches, even technical coaches around dealing with players and even managing yourself at times?
Yeah, 100%. I think that's something that we forget, that even within our coaching staff, like, we need to have those tools ready for coaches too. Because, I mean, if you're not in good health yourself, the players are going to notice, and you're not going to be able to really do your job because you're just dragging yourself to work because there's all those things, like, mentally you're not there. So definitely, I think that's something that we need to take care as coaches first, so we can better give service to our players. So that's definitely important. For
sure. Thanks. Erica, anything to add on that topic?
Yeah, I mean, Ivy, I remember talking to you last year. We both kind of went through our breakdown at the same time, so it was nice to have each other during that. But yeah, it's I think a lot of us are just trying to, like, do more and work harder and, like, tweet more and, like, get out more content and just do more in general. And what I found last year in 2019 was I was just running myself into the ground. Like, I didn't need to work that many hours. I didn't need to be on Twitter that much. Like, I didn't need to do all these things. So I think the lockdown this year just kind of exposed the toxic things in my life that I just needed to get rid of altogether. So less screen time, changing my nutrition, getting more meditation, even just, like, certain, like, friendships I had that I felt were depleting my energy. And I hate to say it, it's like you're friends with people for so long, but you don't realize that it's like, it's holding you back, whether, they're energy vampires or they're negative. So it's like all these things, you, like, take a pause for a second and you're like, wait a minute, like, I was, like, going, but I didn't even realize, like, this piece of my life was, like, really messed up and, like, really holding me back. So it just became more about just becoming a minimalist, and just getting rid of things, and just getting rid of the distractions. And if you mentioned social media, and honestly, like, as much as I'm on Twitter, I don't like social media. Like, I actually, like, hate it. But I think what keeps me going on there is I do want to share my message and my drills and my content, and help young athletes discover their strengths, like the message will always be there. But like, if I like could live without it, like I'd be totally okay with it. So it's like, it's just like this back and forth. It's definitely a love-hate. But I'm totally on board with just like less social media. Meditating every day has become a non-negotiable. I used to just kind of tiptoe around it and be like, oh, I'll get it in, or I'll do it once a week. But it's something you have to commit to, like everything in life. Like, you're not going to get better at meditating and calming your nervous system if you just kind of like go in and out of it. Like, it needs to be a daily commitment. So I do it before I go to bed, and then I sleep better, and then I wake up way more refreshed. So adding that in has been huge. So just it comes back to just taking inventory of all the categories. So every Sunday I rank everything, and I'm extremely strict with myself. And I tell my athletes to be strict with themselves, and even just look at the categories. Okay, well, is this category depleting your energy, or is it uplifting it? And if more are depleting than uplifting, then you need to dive down that, and you need to make a change as soon as possible. So that's been a huge help for the kids, just to become more self-aware. And it's just something that I try to keep up with and just check in with myself. So I think the mental health is, it's so important. I mean, we preach recovery and all of that to our athletes, but meanwhile, us coaches are running ourselves into the ground. Like, that's extremely backwards. And I was like, shoot, I'm actually not practicing what I preach. Like, this is not good. So just becoming aware of that, and just being hard on myself in that regard.
Thank you very much. I think it's really refreshing to hear from both of you this whole holistic training approach that you take. And like you said, Erica, it's not about the X's and O's of physiology and biomechanics. It's about the emotional side. It's about relationships, and that's what's going to drive performance, but also development in the youth side. One last thing from me, ladies, because I know I've kept you for so long and you've given so much good advice to our listeners already. I want to delve into a little bit more about you guys, guys in inverted commas, but about you two. What's next for you, or not next, but what's the end game, and where do you see yourself long term? Something that doesn't get answered very often, and it's quite a reflective thing. So maybe we'll start with you, Erica. Where do you see yourself, and where do you want to go long term?
Yeah, this is such a great question. And I was talking to another coach about it, and we were kind of like, just kind of like making fun of it, because we're like, wait, like, is there an end goal? And you know, it could be different for everyone. But personally, you know, I don't desire to coach pro or D1 or whatever. Like, I've gotten to the point, and I'm lucky to say this and grateful, but I'm really content with what I'm doing. I think more of the question is like, what's your message? How are you continuing to refine it? And the message has always been to empower young female athletes, discover their strengths, be creative, express themselves. So like, that's something I want to just like keep building. I don't know how it's going to look, whether it's I just work with more girls or just keep writing articles and sharing the message. I don't know. I'm just trying to just take it one day at a time, especially now. Like, I don't know what's going to happen in the world. So just coming back to doing what I can control, and what I enjoy about this game, and what I enjoy about coaching, and what I want for the next generation of girls, and how I want them to grow into women. So yeah, I don't really have anywhere I desire to go. So I guess stay tuned, everyone.
Good answer. Evie, you can top that maybe.
Yeah, so I think for me, it's just like I need to stay grounded a little bit more in terms of really focus on what I can control right now, and be there for my players and offer all kinds of resources that they need, especially during this time. I think like Erica said, it's kind of like I feel like their mom a little bit, and I kind of take it personally. Everything they're feeling, I'm like, how can I help, and how can I make you better? And I develop a really big passion now to really educate coaches. So like I'm doing more workshops and I'm doing more mentorships, and that's something that I always wanted to explore more, just to share my experiences and share my perspectives. Not that it's the right or wrong and the only way, but I think I've seen that it helps a lot of young coaches to kind of go through this thing and understand that somebody went through it and was able to get out of it. So definitely, I think that's something that I want to kind of do hand in hand with coaching and continue developing not only players and young players, but also coaches and young coaches and empowered each other. I think that's something that's been really bringing a lot of motivation for me, especially during this time.
Perfect. Ladies, thank you so much for your time today. I know you're super busy women and super busy coaches in the trenches, as you say. Thank you very much. I'm sure the listeners are going to get so much from this. Caoimhe, a fantastic episode there. Huh?
Yeah, and I know you guys are speaking of not being major fans of social media, but I personally love everything you guys are putting up. So hopefully that doesn't go away too soon.
No, thank you.
Yes, no. Me and Erica will keep putting the content that they want, right?
we keep going, Vivian. We just ignore the hate.
Yeah, ignore the hate, and we focus on our meditation, breathing, and then we'll deal with the other stuff.
If there's hate, I have no time for you. Open discussion, yes, but hate, no tolerance.
Yes. I know.
For sure. Well, I don't think there should be too much of that for your girls' work. So credit to both of you. Thank you very much. Just for the listeners as well, please head over to www.deelysportscience.com and have a look at all the services we got on offer over there. And massive thank you to our sponsors, www.rypt.app, and you can have a look at the services they can give as well. Ladies, thank you very much. It's evening time here, so we'll be going to bed soon, but enjoy the rest of your day. And we'll
Thanks so much, guys.
I'm going to catch up soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
It was a pleasure.